What's up, my friends, and welcome into the PHLY Phillies podcast. As always, brought to you by our friends over at Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use that promo code above my shoulder, PHLY365. Deposit just $10, place a bet for $5, and you will get $150 back in bonus bets, whether your bet wins or loses. Hello to you all, and a happy Friday. We've made it. You can probably see it in my face and hear it in my voice. This has been a day. Of all the days that I've had this week, this is one of them. Technical difficulties beyond belief throughout this afternoon and early portion of the afternoon and morning for us here at PHLY. So hello to you all. Thank you so much for being a part of today's show. I hope that we will have a limited amount of technical difficulties today. But we will do our best to forge on even if we do. Tyler Zula here with you as always, and a happy Friday. We've made it to the end of another work week. Ethan Hartley, Julia Hoff producing today's show. We have a lot to get into. Now, with no game yesterday and a new series coming up against the Texas Rangers this weekend, at the start of a 10-game road trip for the Phils, where I think their metal's going to be tested a little bit. They're going to have an opportunity to go up against a couple of good teams that are just on the outside looking in of the playoff picture in both the American League in the Texas Rangers and in the National League in the Cincinnati Reds. They'll play 4 in Washington, which is not a difficult by opponent series, but it is the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th games of a road trip. That always proves to be a difficult feat as well. So the next 2 weeks or so are going to prove a little bit difficult for the Phillies and will test their mettle a little bit. And they also don't have a day off until not this Thursday coming up, the next Thursday after that, because there is a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday series as well the following week. So they're playing 13 consecutive days. And for a team that's got about 47 games left in the regular season, that is more than a quarter of the games remaining. I mean, you're talking about over the next 2 weeks, we're going to go from 47 to 34, and you're going to kind of start to see a little bit of a separator between the good and the bad teams, the good and the average teams. And I've said this for a while. I think that there really are 7 National League teams for the six playoff spots. We'll talk more about the National League standings as the show unfolds with our Cranking the Heat Ace Hardware Temp Check segment. We'll do that in segment number 2. But today I thought we would take a look at the teams in the National League playoff standings, the teams that are the 3 division winners, the 3 wildcard teams, and then the Cincinnati Reds who are just on the outside looking in, and take a look at where they stand. Take a look at their strengths and their weaknesses. Because for me, I've said this plenty. I've said this with Andrew Frazier a lot. We've talked a lot about this on the show. I think every team in the National League has something that they're really, really good at. And then I think they have something that is a deficiency, a weakness, if you will. And that's why I wanted to take a look at every team's strengths and weakness heading into the final 50 or less games of the regular season to really get an understanding of where do the Phillies stack up, how good is the rest of the National League, and what kind of run can the Phillies make if they play their best baseball. So let's start with the Phils. And this is where our big deal segment of the day is going to come into play. It's brought to you by our friends over at Cherry Hill Mitsubishi. Head on over to cherryhillmitsubishi.com to shop 24/7 to get any and all of the latest and greatest Mitsubishis that they have to offer. You can get in on the Outlander, the 2025 Outlander, which is an incredible 7-passenger SUV. You can check them out online or really across any of the bridges right into Cherry Hill. That complex is an awesome place to check out your next car. And if you head on over, you get a trade appraisal or a test drive, you get a $100 restaurant.com gift card. So really no risk to you to get a free night out, take a date night, whatever it might be. But it is our big deal segment brought to you by our friends over at Cherry Hill Mitsubishi. Let's start with the Phils. I think that's the natural place to start. First and foremost, because we have our eyes on them more frequently than any of the other teams, and this is the Phillies podcast. So what is the Phillies' strength? I think it's fairly obvious. I think it's the starting pitching. There's no question about it. This team has ridden its starting pitching all year long to a lot of success. Now, there's a lot of talent in the lineup when it's competing, and we'll talk about what their weakness may be in just a little bit, but this team has benefited from its starting pitching, maybe more so than any other team in the National League, and maybe more so than any other team in all of baseball. They have, to me, the best starting rotation in the game. Now, heading into the season, I believe I picked them second behind the Seattle Mariners. And the Mariners' starting rotation is still really, really good, but they've been banged up with some injuries. Logan Gilbert's missed some time. George Kirby's missed some time. Brian Woo's been really good. But I think the Phillies right this moment have the best starting rotation in all of baseball. Now, numerically, since the All-Star break, they have been pretty good. But throughout the course of the season, they've been really good. They have the third best starting pitching ERA this year in baseball with a 3.40. Only the Milwaukee Brewers and the Texas Rangers have better rotation ERAs for the first 120 games or so of the regular season. They're also just one of 7 teams with multiple complete games this year. And quite frankly, if Christopher Sanchez made the start that he made on Sunday night against the Tigers 3 weeks ago, he probably would have given them their third complete game, one of only 3 teams to have 3 complete games. But Ethan and I were talking about this before the show started. Starting pitching and rotational depth has changed over the years, and you don't see as many complete games, you don't see as many shutouts. And when you acquire a guy like Yohan Duran, it makes sense, right? You want it, you warm the guy up. It's a 2-0 game. You want to get your elite level closer into the action that you're expecting him to pitch in late September and into the postseason. I had no problem with Rob Thompson, even with Christopher Sanchez only at 83 or 84 pitches. I had no problem with Rob Thompson going to Duran in that spot because that's the kind of spot that Duran's going to pitch in the postseason. High leverage, back end of the bullpen, 9th inning type of stuff to close the game out. But, I mean, I think throughout most of baseball now, you just really don't have a lot of innings pitched with the collective starting rotation for any one team. And in fact, the Phillies so far this year have thrown the most innings out of their starting rotation in all of baseball. They have 653 innings pitched out of their starting rotation. And yes, that includes a lot of late innings pitched by Zach Wheeler, a lot of late innings pitched by Christopher Sanchez, good innings pitched by Ranger Suarez. The good starts from Jesus Luzardo tend to go 6 and 7 innings. But it also includes 3 and 4 innings from Mick Abel. It includes Taijuan Walker being kind of a swing guy between the bullpen and the rotation when he's not fully stretched out, him going 4 innings or 4 2/3 or getting into the 5th. It includes Aaron Nola not pitching well at the beginning of the season. So the Phillies starting rotation, especially with those top 3 guys or top 4 guys really with Wheeler and the 3 lefties, have thrown a lot of innings this season. And not only have they thrown the most innings in baseball out of the starting rotation, it's not even particularly close. The Seattle Mariners, who I brought up earlier, are second. They're at 635 and 2/3 innings. So let's do the quick math real quick. The Phillies starting rotation has almost 18 innings pitched more than the Seattle Mariners this year, who are in second. That's 2 full games worth of innings between number 1 and number 2. And it doesn't seem like a lot over 162, but you think about it in an individual start, it might be a third of an inning. It might be an inning here. It might be 2 there. And then the Mariners starter goes 8 and your starter goes 5 and you lose 3, right? So like it balances itself out throughout the season. The Phillies starting depth, even with the back end of it being tested, with Nola being injured and Taijuan Walker bouncing back and forth and pitching relatively well. I mean, we talked about him on Wednesday. Give him a lot of credit for the way that he's pitched to a 3.53 ERA. Give him a lot of credit for what he's done. I mean, you're talking about Mick Abel not giving you a lot of length in his starts, especially later in his Phillies tenure. You talk about Taijuan Walker bouncing around. You talk about Aaron Nola struggling at times this season. They are far and away the innings leaders out of the starting rotation. And despite the fact that they've thrown the most innings this season out of as a rotation, they have 7 teams ahead of them that have given up more hits in their rotations respectively. They have also, as a unit, issued the 5th fewest walks this year so far. I mean, this starting rotation has been elite, and it's been the buoy for this team for most of the year because of the offensive inconsistencies that we've seen throughout the season. The Phillies so far this year have 653 innings pitched as a starting rotation. They have 693 strikeouts. They are well above a strikeout per inning pitched as a collective unit. And again, much like the innings pitched, they are blowing away the competition. The Astros are second with 645. The Phillies have 48 more strikeouts as a starting rotation than the next closest team in the Houston Astros, who, by the way, get a ton of strikeouts from Hunter Brown, get a ton of strikeouts from Framber Valdez. It's been, I think the Astros are a really good baseball team. I would not be stunned if we're sitting here 2 months from now talking about the Astros making a postseason run and getting deep into the postseason. But the Phillies' rotation, strikeout-wise, has been that much better than the Astros, who are second. The Phillies also have the second best whip in all of rotations at 1.18. Only Texas is better. It's going to be a really good pitching matchup weekend for the Phillies and the Rangers. The Phillies are going to see Jacob deGrom. They miss Nate Eovaldi, which is unfortunate. For like a baseball lover standpoint, they miss Nate Eovaldi, but they are going to get deGrom. They get Merrill Kelly tonight, who they acquired at the trade deadline. The Phillies are very familiar with Kelly from the 2023 NLCS. And Patrick Corbin, who's had a very good year. I have buried Patrick Corbin on this show before. Patrick Corbin's had a nice year so far. A 3.6 ERA or something like that. For a guy who was legitimately one of the worst starters in baseball over the last 2 seasons, he's had a really nice bounce-back year. But to wrap up this conversation about the Phillies' strength, which is clearly the starting rotation, the Phillies' individual ERAs so far this year. Christopher Sanchez, a 2.40 ERA. That's 5th best amongst qualified starters in all of baseball. The only starters that have better ERAs than Christopher Sanchez this year, Tarek Skubal, Garrett Crochet, Paul Skeens, Matthew Boyd. That's it. They're the only 4 qualified starters with better ERAs than Christopher Sanchez's 2.40. Zach Wheeler, who we've talked about his ERA, has inflated a little bit over the last couple of starts and has been pushed back from Friday to Sunday, is 9th in baseball amongst qualified starters at 2.64. Ranger Suarez, who doesn't qualify because of his amount of innings pitched and the amount of starts that he's made, is at 2.94, even with the rough couple of starts that he's had post-All-Star break. And Taijuan Walker, who, again, not a guy that qualifies because he's only made 13 starts, so far this year has a 3.53 ERA. So if you want to talk about what the strength of the Phillies team is, there's no question about it. The bullpen's gotten better. Their offense has been a little bit more consistent as of late. But there's no question about it. The Phillies' strength this year is their starting rotation. And it continues to be their strength. And it's going to be their strength into the postseason. And if you told me, again, that's why I keep saying, if you told me the Phillies were going to go and make a World Series run, I would believe it would be on the strength of their rotation and on their pitching staff in general with the high leverage guys in the back end of the bullpen. But I think it would be on the strength of their starting rotation, headlined by Zach Wheeler, Christopher Sanchez, and Ranger Suarez. It's that good. All right, that's our big deal segment of the day, talking about what is the big deal surrounding the Phillies. The big deal for you is heading over to Cherry Hill Mitsubishi at cherryhillmitsubishi.com to shop 24/7 or across any of the bridges. Again, get in that 7-passenger SUV, the Mitsubishi Outlander. It is an incredible car. You're not going to be disappointed. And you'll continue to feel like you're in a brand new, beautiful car because you are. And I think that it just it goes to show you how incredible Cherry Hill's complex is. But the Mitsubishis, especially if your family's growing, you need that third row. The Outlander is the car to think about to take home. All right, before we get to our break, let's get to the Phillies' weaknesses, because they have weaknesses. There's no question about it. Every team does in the National League. I think we've talked about this plenty. This will probably be a much briefer segment compared to the starting rotation. But the Phillies' weakness this year so far has been their inconsistencies on offense. There are times where I watch the Phillies' offense and I go, that's the team that I expect. That's the team that at the top of the lineup is buoyed by Trey Turner at the leadoff spot with Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber, and then somebody else to help out, whether it be JT Realmuto, whether it be Nick Castellanos, Alec Bohm when he gets healthy, whether it be one of the unsung heroes like we saw in Game 2 against the Orioles with guys like Brandon Marsh. I'm expecting the top 3, Turner, Harper, Schwarber, to be contributors even with Turner having a little bit of a downturn in the second half, those three guys I expect to be your big catalyst at the top of the lineup. But the Phillies need help from other positions. They need one other guy on any given night. And I'm not asking it to be the same guy throughout the postseason. It could be one night with JT, one night with Castellanos, one night with Bohm, one night with Edmundo Sosa playing against the lefty. They need one other guy, I think, to kind of keep this team afloat as an offensive unit. Now, we've talked about this plenty over the last couple of weeks. So far this year, the Phillies have played 47 games in which they've scored 3 runs or less. They are 15 games under 500 when they hit that mark of 3 runs or less. They're 16-31. And quite frankly, I'd expect it to be worse than that. But that is a testament to how good their strength is, which is their starting rotation, because they've won a lot of games this year, 3-2, 2-1, 2-0 type of games, because their rotation is that good. But they're 16-31 in those 47 games. That's a lot of games to score 3 runs or less. If you want to even extrapolate it a little bit further, get a little bit more micro to this conversation, the 33 times this year, they've scored 2 or less. It's a lot of games for a team that has World Series aspirations to come up short offensively. I know you're going to go through ebbs and flows throughout a season. There's no question about it. Every team does. You're watching the best team, the best offense in baseball through most of the season, the Chicago Cubs, have some offensive inconsistencies over the last couple of weeks. Good teams, they go through that roller coaster, right? But the part about being the good team is you're looking, if you're using the roller coaster comparison here, you're looking to be on the chain lift when you get to the postseason and not bottoming out at the end at the bottom of the hill. You want to be on the chain lift and continuing to ascend as the postseason gets underway. Right now, so far this year, the Phillies only have 2 players, Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper, who have over 500 slug and in this case, over 800 OPS. They inversely, however, have a multitude of guys who have slugging percentages all below 400. Alec Bohm, JT Realmuto, Max Kepler, Bryson Stott, if you want to include Otto Kemp into the conversation. He's played enough games. The 27 games of Weston Wilson and the 5 games so far of Harrison Bader, they all have slugging percentages under 400. But this is where the ebbs and flows part comes in. As a team, since the All-Star break, they have the 4th best slugging percentage and the 5th best OPS. And all season, and this is kind of where the Max Kepler portion of this comes into play, where it's like, is he getting a little bit more unlucky than his numbers dictate? They have the 6th highest hard hit percentage, and they are 8th in barrel rates per plate appearance. They're hitting the ball hard. Sometimes they're not getting rewarded for it, but it's an offense that does hit the ball hard. So with that being said, this is an offense that is filled with inconsistencies. It's an offense that at times looks like it can win a World Series. It's also an offense that 47 times this year have scored 3 or fewer runs. And that is probably the weakness. That's the concern for this team, because when you put your starting rotation and your pitching staff under a microscope, winning and losing postseason games 2-1 becomes a really difficult ask consistently. Can they do it? No question about it. Do I want them to have to do it? Not particularly. And that's why I think the scope of this team's postseason trajectory is huge between floor and between the ceiling. All right, on the other side, we're going to get into some of the other postseason teams around the National League. We'll think about the Mets, the Brewers, the Cubs, the Dodgers, and kind of what they're looking at, where they stack up and what their strengths and weaknesses are. It is the PHLY Phillies podcast. It's brought to you by our friends over at Bet365. Find out more about Bet365 and find out why it's never ordinary at Bet365. And we're going to pause for just a moment. We'll tell you about some of our friends, and we'll be right back after this. All right, let's start with Bet365. They're our presenting sponsor, and they kick things off today. You find out why 90 million users worldwide have tapped in to Bet365. They live stream 780,000 events each year across 78 different sports. So, for example, last night, I don't know what it was. I just couldn't sleep last night. I was up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I was up giving my 9-month-old some medicine because his teeth are coming in, and He's, having a little bI'm bit of a tough time with the teeth, so we had to do some ibuprofen 3 o'clock in the morning, and I couldn't get back to bed. So I'm scrolling Bet365, and I'm looking at it, and I see live events happening all across the world. And that's the beauty of Bet365 is you can get in on all the action pretty much 24/7. And new customers right now, $150 in bonus bets. Yep, you heard it right. You get $150 in bonus bets when you deposit $10, place a bet for just $5, and of course use the promo code PHLY365. And the best part about that $150 in bonus bets, you get it whether your $5 bet wins or loses. You can use that bonus money on spreads, totals, player props, futures, whatever whatever you want to get in, you can do it with your bonus bet money. And of course, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. If must be 21 and physically located in PA. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, please call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, let me tell you about one of my favorite ticketing apps in all of sports, in all of concert, comedy, theater. Of course, it is the Game Time app. I've been telling you about the 3D seat view for years now. I love it. You use it when you go to an event, maybe to a venue you've never been to before. You're going to click on where the seat is. You're going to get a 3D view of the venue and where the stage may be, or where the home plate may be, where the end zones are, which goalies you're looking at in hockey, and you get an understanding of where your view is going to be. You don't want obstructed seats. Listen, baseball still has some old stadiums. They're starting to upgrade, but there's a handful of old stadiums left across baseball. You don't want to sit behind a pole. You don't want to get tucked up against the wall and have a terrible viewpoint. You can avoid all of that with the Game Time app. And with Game Time, you know you are getting the best ticketing deals, killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets, and not just MLB tickets, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever it might be. You can get it all on the Game Time app. They offer priority last-minute deals. You're going to save up to 60% when you buy last minute on your tickets, and incredible all-in pricing, so you're not going to have to worry about those hidden fees when you're looking to enter your credit card information. You're going to know exactly what you're going to pay up front. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code PHLY for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code PHLY for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the PHLY Phillies podcast. Hello to everybody in the chat. K-Red, Elephant in the Room, everybody else who's hanging out, a happy Friday to you. Thank you so much for being a part of today's show. If you would not mind, before you get out of here, hit that like button. It's free. Doesn't cost you anything. Takes 2 seconds. And, it really helps us out in the algorithms and things like that. If you wouldn't mind, hit the like button before you get out of here. And if you're not subscribed, we recently broke the 47,000 subscriber mark. And our goal by the end of the year is to break the 50K mark. So we got a little bit of work to do still, but I think 3,000 is very reasonable over the next couple of months. And if you're a part of it, would really appreciate it. If you're not a part of it, would really appreciate you being a subscriber here to PHLY. All right, let's get into we're going to get to the Mets in just a moment, but I want to get to our Cranking the Heat segment, which, of course, is brought to you by our friends over at Ace Hardware and Ace Hardware Home Services. Check out acehardwarehomeservices.com to get started on your next project today. Again, don't get fooled into thinking the weather's been a little bit nicer. The weather's broke. It's not 97 degrees out anymore. We got more summer coming, friends. Don't have your AC not pumping and kicking on full blast for the remainder of the summer. Or if you're thinking about the winter months, don't wait on your heating till when it gets cold. Because I don't know about you, I hate being cold. I don't like being in a cold house. I grew up in a house where my room, for whatever reason, was the hottest room in the summer and the coldest room in the winter, and it was miserable. So don't let that happen. If your heat, your air, whatever it might be, is out of tune, head on over to Ace Hardware Home Services.com to get started on your next project. All right, let's take a look at our weekly Friday National League standings. We'll see where everybody sits as the National League starts to kind of get an understanding of where it might be. As I've said, I think there are 7 teams for 6 playoff spots. You might see teams like the Cardinals in the mix. You see teams like the Giants in the mix. They are still in this conversation, right? There's still almost 50 games left to play. Anything could happen. We've seen teams like the Arizona Diamondbacks as of late get hot. We've seen teams like the Washington Nationals in 2019 get hot and ride it all the way to a World Series title. But what we have in front of us, I think, are 7 good teams for 6 postseason spots. And so the team I want to highlight today, because every time I talk about this team, I am kind of baffled at why they're so good. And at some point, I just have to start like sitting here and admitting they're just a really, really good baseball team. And it's the Milwaukee Brewers, who are our heating up component. And they've pretty much, I don't even want to say they're heating up, but they're just been the most consistent team in the National League pretty much from May on. They are now 26 games over 500. They have not only the best record in the National League, but the best record in all of baseball. They are 4.5 games up on the LA Dodgers for the top seed in the National League. They are now 4 games up on the Chicago Cubs in the division in the NL Central. This is just a really good Brewers team that does a lot of things really well. They have 14 wins since the All-Star break. It's the most across Major League Baseball. It's by far the most in the National League, but it's the most across Major League Baseball. Since the All-Star break, the Brewers have the 5th best team ERA at 3.41, the 4th best whip, 1.17, and the 2nd best opponent batting average at 218. They also, offensively, so their pitching's been really good. Offensively, they have the best batting average, the best OBP, the best OPS, and the 3rd best slugging, not just in the National League, across all of Major League Baseball. For a league right now that does not have a team hitting 260, which still boggles my mind how we've gotten to this point, but there is not a team collectively across all of Major League Baseball that is hitting 260 this season. They are hitting 257, which is the best in baseball. Right now, they have 7 players who have played more than 90 games on their roster with a 260 or better batting average. They also don't strike out. So Christian Yelich has struck out 126 times this year. No other player on the team has more than 98 strikeouts. They just don't strike out. It's a team that puts the ball in play really consistently. They also steal a lot of bags. They have 8 different players with 10 or more stolen bases. Let's take it a step further. They're extra base merchants as well. They have 8 different players with 20 or more extra base hits. And if you take it to 25, it's still 4 players on their roster with 25 or more extra base hits. We talked about this on Wednesday. Guys, I got to be honest with you right now. I genuinely think the Milwaukee Brewers are the most complete team in the National League. I never would have said that in April. I wouldn't have said it in May. I'm not sure I would have said it 6 weeks ago. But this team right now is a really, really, really good team. I don't know if they have a flaw. We're talking about strengths and weaknesses. What are the Brewers' strengths right now? Pretty much everything they're doing. They hit timely. They don't strike out. They put the ball in play. They steal bags. That's all offense. Their starting rotation's been really, really good. Jacob Misiorowski's a freak, but, Freddie Peralta has been... I think Freddie Peralta is one of the most underrated pitchers in baseball. Like, he's just a dude who goes out and competes every single night, and then you look up and you go, Freddie Peralta's 13-5 with a 3.03 ERA. He's got 141 Ks in 130 innings. But it's not just Peralta. Quinn Priester has been really good out of the rotation since joining the rotation. Jose Quintana, who's now back and pitching 17 starts, 3.5 ERA, just consistent, right? Doesn't wow you, doesn't throw a lot of strikeouts, but he keeps the ball in the yard and keeps runs to a minimum. Like, they have starters who have posted 3.03, 3.15, 3.52, 3.57. This is just a team. And Misiorowski, who's at a 2.7 through his first 7 starts. Like, it's just a team that's doing everything well right now. And then you look at their bullpen, And they have 8 different pitchers this year who have a 3.6 ERA or better. So they go out at the deadline and acquire Shelby Miller, who had a really, really good start to the year with the Diamondbacks, posted a 1.98 ERA so far this season. And since coming over, obviously hasn't pitched, but will be ready, I think, in time in the postseason, and he's going to be really good. 1.98 ERA, throws hard. Here's the back end of the bullpen. Abner Uribe, talk about Freddie Peralta being one of the most underrated starters. Abner Uribe, one of the most underrated relievers in baseball this year, throws almost 99 on average. Trevor McGill, been excellent, 99.1. Jared Koenig, a guy that I thought, if the Brewers were going to be out of it, that's who I would have targeted as the Phillies guy, that obviously the Brewers need him, 95.6. And then Shelby Miller comes into the mix, and his average fastball velocity, 95.2. This bullpen throws smoke. And it's been much better as of late than it was in the beginning portion of the season. Right this moment, the Brewers are just playing really good baseball. And I'm not so sure they have a flaw. If you were to ask me what their flaw is, I guess their weakness right now is relative playoff inexperience. So the last 2 years, the Brewers have been eliminated in the wild card round. They lost to the Mets, who, I don't know, were the Mets the hottest team in baseball last year in the postseason? It was them or probably the Detroit Tigers, right? Lost to the Mets in the wild card round. Probably shouldn't have, by the way. Devin Williams blows the save with the lead in the 9th inning. They end up losing that series. The year before, they lost to the Arizona Diamondbacks, who I think probably were the hottest team in baseball. Diamondbacks end up winning the DS, beat the Phillies in the CS, lose to the Rangers in the World Series. But I think the Diamondbacks heading into the postseason were the hottest team in baseball. The Brewers are likely going to avoid having to play in the wild card round. And then that means they're going to get the Phillies or the Mets or the Padres or the Cubs or whomever, likely tossing their third or fourth starter, which again, if it's the Phillies, right, I still feel good about going into game 1 of the DS with a Ranger Suarez or even a Jesus Luzardo, on the mound. You still feel okay about it. But if it's the Cubs, talk more about them in a little bit, their rotation's not very good. The Brewers are going to have the upper hand by having rest. And I still believe the rest is important. I know we've seen teams not play well after the rest. The Braves have, B and C'd for years about, we won the division and then we lost in the DS. Well, maybe win games, dude. It's not that hard. I mean, it is hard, but that's the way to go about it, is just win the games, right? And I understand there's a lot of conversation about the rest versus rust thing, but I think the Brewers right now are going to have the leg up on pretty much everybody except the other team that gets the bye, and they're not going to have to worry about that team until the CS anyway. I guess the lack of relative inexperience is they're really their only flaw right now. They've not won a playoff series since 2018. They're now talking about, almost closing in on a decade, right? It's not quite a decade, but more than not since 2018, since they've won a playoff series. It's a long time for a team. And obviously, this is a much different team. It's a different team. It's a different manager, different group of guys, but it's a long time, right? I think that starts to maybe sit on your fan base a little bit, especially considering that they probably should have won the wild card last year. But man, right now, this Brewers team, they're just firing on all cylinders right now. And they're the team that's kind of cranking up the heat. And that's our Ace Hardware Temp Check segment, our cranking the heat pennant push check, as we do each and every Friday as we get you the latest on the National League. We usually do a team that is, cooling off as well. But I think for the most part, most of the other teams are kind of hanging right around where they were. Obviously, the Phillies have jumped the Mets to take control of the National League East, but the Dodgers still hold claim in the West. The Cubs and the Padres are still the 2 other wild card teams. Padres have played some good ball as of late, but most of these teams are kind of like 3-3, 4-3, 3-4 over their last week or so. So there's not a whole lot to check in on who's cooling off, but the Brewers are without question heating up, and they're playing some really, really good baseball right now. All right, on the other side, we still have the Mets to get to. We still have the Cubs to get to. and the Padres and the Dodgers, the NL West teams, excuse me. We'll talk about them at the end of the show as well. It's the PHLY Phillies podcast. Of course, it's brought to you by our friends over at Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. We will be right back after this. All right, let me tell you about my hometown casino. And when I say my hometown casino, I don't just mean because of the fact that that's their tagline. It's legitimately my hometown casino. Born and raised in Ben Salem, you can get to parks just pretty much anywhere you need to come from. Street Road exit, 95, Street Road exit, the Turnpike. It's simple. The two big roads in Pennsylvania, at least in our area of the state, it's so easily and readily accessible. It legitimately takes you less than 5 minutes to get to Parks and Parks Casino from either the Turnpike or from the Street Road exit of 95. And whether your favorite team wins or not, there's always another way to win with the Bet Parks online casino. So you don't want to get out, right? You got some things you got to do, right? You're like me and you've got a little one at home and you don't get out too much these days. Well, you can get in on the Parks Casino and Parks Online Casino app. You can check out their brand new casino games like Huff and More Puff, Fireblaze Sky Queen. They are Bet Parks exclusives. It's the only app that I use to play all of my favorite casino games right in the palm of my hand. I am a big blackjack fan. I have been playing a lot of blackjack with the Parks Casino and the Parks Online Casino app recently, but you can play blackjack, roulette, craps, poker, baccarat, and of course, all of the hot online slots as well, especially the slots that are based on your favorite streaming shows like Walking Dead, Breaking Bad, Squid Game, Peaky Blinders, and of course, all of your favorite classic casino games right from wherever you are. And how about this? New users right now up to $1,000 in casino bonus back if you're down in the first 24 hours. Just head on over to betparks.com, download the app right now, and enjoy all of the action and excitement from the casino right at your fingertips. Must be 21. And in PA, New Jersey, Maryland, or Michigan, for Bet Parks, you love to play, you play to win, you bet Parks. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, let's tell you about our friends over at Ace Hardware and Ace Hardware Home Services. Whether it's something small like needing to get an outlet fixed, or as we brought up in the temp check segment, your heating, your plumbing, your HVAC, don't put it off if you have the ability to get it fixed. Ace Hardware and Ace Hardware Home Services have you covered. They're the team, the local trusted pros that get the job done right, answer all of your questions professionally, and they're not going to stop until the job is done to your satisfaction. At Ace Hardware Home Services, whether you're getting ready for the next job, they will, while you're getting ready for the next job, they are going to remember exactly what to bring. What do they bring? Experience, understanding, helpful. And of course, they offer free estimates on equipment installation and replacement with trusted advisors and options that are best suited for your home and your budget. It's service you can trust and satisfaction that is guaranteed. And how about this? They're local. They're the teams that work and live in your community, and they're dedicated to keeping their neighbors comfortable in their home. So head on over to Ace Hardware Home Services online at acehardwarehomeservices.com to get started on your next project today. All right. Welcome back to the PHLY Phillies podcast. Hello to everybody in the chat. Want to send a shout out to our guy Futz. Futz, appreciate the super chat. Thank you so much. Futz says, my guy Tyler had a long night into a long morning. He deserves a beer. Futz, I'm not going to lie to you. I legitimately said to Ethan and Joey before the show started today. So I don't, this is not like information I've made public. So no worries. I stopped drinking about 9 or 10 months ago, kind of coinciding with, being a dad. But I stopped drinking about 9 or 10 months ago, but I literally said to them before the show started, this is a day that I could really use a beer. This is a day I could really use a beer because, Ethan, I don't know if you saw everything that we had going against us this afternoon or this morning. Every technological issue that we could possibly have had this morning, we had. It was like, so normally Friday, Ant and VG do their show out in the lobby. Tried to do that, mics weren't working. Rebooted the system, started a new show. Mics still weren't working. We kicked it over to the studio in Studio A. The Studio A, by the way, is the one that Anthony uses. That's what we call it, Studio A. And then we had a slew of issues. Our monitors weren't working. Our mics weren't working. Our audio outputs weren't working. Anthony had to take my producer headset and wear it. And it was like as stretched across the room as it could possibly be. And only he could hear our guests. Now, our viewers could hear our guests, which is what we really want.
Yeah.
But VG couldn't hear any of our guests. Danny D couldn't hear our guest. I couldn't hear our guest. Ethan, first of all, hello. Welcome to the program, because I'm not sure we've had a chance to have a conversation with you yet on the program.
No, this is my first time. It's awesome to be here.
My goodness, man, everything that possibly could have gone wrong went wrong this morning.
And that's how it is sometimes in this industry. When you work with so much technology, sometimes it can just be one thing after the other, and you have to improvise. I mean, I can only imagine, not only with the camera stands and the lights just feeding the cord through, not knocking over anything, and so much,
I always tell people this job is relatively easy when things go well. We're not saving lives. We're not teaching the youth of America. We're not overseas in our military, right? In terms of relative ease of this job, we are very, very low in terms of easy, hard. Like, this is a very easy job when things go right. It's more of a pain in the ass job when things go wrong. It's not physically demanding, right? I'm not hauling lumber. I'm not doing construction 100 floors up like we see in Center City. But it is I guess it's just a mentally taxing job when things don't go well. Because really, it's not a hard job until you have to be pressed into action. And then all of a sudden, stuff hits the fan and you got to figure it out real fast.
I think that's kind of how it works. The idea of what you're paid for. Like, I used to be a lifeguard growing up, and they would, it would always think in my mind, all I'm doing is just sitting all day. But
95% of the time, your job was real easy.
Yeah.
But you were the most important person in the area
when something would happen, and that is the idea of why you get paid. So, and kind of the same way in that you got to be ready when something happens. And
I would say 20% of my salary is reserved for the good days, and 80% of my salary is reserved for the bad days.
Yeah, you got to be on top of it when something goes wrong. And I mean, even during the show, you don't have the monitor up. I've been trying to give you cues of what's up. So it's just kind of one thing after the other.
Let me ask you. We've done the Phillies and the Brewers so far. We're going to get to the Mets and the other teams in just a second. Haven't had a chance to talk to you about kind of the overarching scope of the postseason. Where are you kind of in terms of, because I've said plenty of times on this show, the floor and the ceiling for the Phillies postseason run is a massive difference. Like, if you told me that the Phillies might win the World Series, I could get behind it. And if you told me the Phillies were to lose 2 games in a wild card round, like 2-1 or 3-2, I could believe you too, because of the offensive inconsistencies. If you had to kind of stake claim to one of those two trends, the ceiling or the floor, what do you think is a more likely scenario for this team?
I don't know, but when I look at the last 5 years or so, when I see teams going a lot of runs, it's kind of like the March Madness Cinderella type deal. You look at Texas, you look at Arizona last year.
Mm-hmm. Brought up Washington from 2019.
Exactly.
They were the worst team in baseball at the All-Star break.
Exactly. And to stick with the same core, and for Dombrowski to kind of move the needle just a little bit, to say, kind of, what was the owner, the Mariners owner quote? We have to win this percentage of games.
Yeah, 54% of the games.
Yeah, to have that kind of mentality, I feel like is very similar. Where it's all right, I'm just going to give up enough.
That's an ownership group that doesn't want to win, by the way.
Exactly.
They want to make money.
Yeah, and to kind of just be, let me move it just a little bit. Let me not pay for Suarez, but let me just get a Harrison Bader and just be right a little bit over the needle. It's really hard for me to buy in the third year that we're now, fourth year now actually, that we're doing this. And I feel maybe they might get really lucky, but it's going to take a similar kind of run. And I think it's viewed in a much different scope with the kind of expectations that this team now has going into year 4 of this core. And, outside of Trey Turner coming in, not really that much different compared to where they were in their World Series run.
I think that I don't want to place it on one person, because, as I said, I think you could give me a fourth guy every night and I would be cool with it. I do think there is a lot of onus on the shoulders heading into the postseason on the shoulders of Trey Turner, because I expect Bryce Harper to hit. I expect Kyle Schwarber to hit. I expect Bryson Stott not to hit. I expect, the center field position, Bader, Marsh, whoever it might be, I'm like baseline with them. So I think a lot of onus is going to rest on the shoulders of Trey Turner, because Trey Turner numerically is a catalyst for this team. I always say Kyle Schwarber is the catalyst of this team, and that's why I was cool with him hitting leadoff for as long as he did. Obviously, the numbers tell you like he works best right now as a two through four guy.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of the offensive catalyst nature, if you will, for this team heading into the stretch and into the postseason probably belongs to Trey Turner, because Trey Turner's numbers, if you look at Trey Turner throughout the season so far this year, his first half was excellent. His second half, he's stumbling a little bit. When Trey Turner reaches base 2 times in a game, the amount of times that the Phillies offense is successful and the amount of times that culminates in Phillies wins, it's a really high percentage. And I think even from a smaller perspective, the amount of times when Trey Turner gets on base 2 times in a game, the amount of times that he doesn't score at least once is very, very low. And so I think your expectations are Harper hits, Schwarber hits, a couple guys expecting maybe not to hit. I think Turner's going to have a lot of focus on him heading into the postseason.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense kind of being the third hitter in the lineup. I think I really look at the Yankees from last year when you have, Soto and Judge coming up back to back. I think there needs to be a little bit more of that. And you'll have Bryce and Schwarber, but just having that full well-roundedness as much as you can, I think is incredibly important. And we've seen other players drop the ball. Castellanos has been hit or miss in the postseason. Bohm. Really, we're kind of waiting for that next step, that next elevation in the postseason. And I think Trey Turner, for the amount that you have invested in him, is almost expected at this point that he really needs to show more.
You bring up the Yankees, right? You bring up those 2 guys, Judge and Soto. And like Austin Wells had a fine year as a rookie. Average-wise wasn't like great, but had some timely hits, finished 3rd in the Rookie of the Year. I think, primarily because the Rookie of the Year voting in the American League wasn't a ton of strong candidates. Mm-hmm. Like, I think any of the 3 guys that were finalists in the National League would have run away with the American League Rookie of the Year. Yeah. What was it? It was Merrill. Jackson Merrill won it, right? And then it was, oh gosh, why am I blanking? Yeah. I'm going to look it up. Give me one moment, because I think it was, Paul Skeens won it. Jackson Merrill finished second. Jackson Chourio finished 3rd.
Okay.
I think any one of those 3 guys run away with the American League, because Luis Hill won the American League, and he had a fine year, but like
it's night and day.
Right.
Obviously,
so kind of all right, but back to the Yankees, which was the initial point of the conversation, right? Austin Wells was fine, but he was what he was. Anthony Rizzo only ended up playing 92 games at first base. He hit 228. Gleyber Torres, who by the way is having a much better year this season, hit 257. Anthony Volpe has been underwhelming as a highly touted prospect, has been underwhelming for most of his career. Alex Verdugo did not have a particularly good year. Giancarlo Stanton hit a ton of home runs in a small sample size, but had a sub-300 OBP and struck out 143 times in 114 games. That was a lot of pressure on Judge and Soto to be the guys that they needed them to be. That, when I think about the floor of the Phillies, that's where my concern lies, is there's a lot of pressure on Harper and Schwarber to be the guys that they need to be.
Yeah, 100%. Just always as a whole, I think it kind of goes back to, even the very original, right before they switched over having a designated hitter in the NL, it was always just kind of like, we can just take this one off when the pitcher would come up to the plate, and some would do great. And I think that's a real extreme example of that. But even in the postseason, when Johan Rojas is coming up, and it's just really challenging that. It's
very likely at this point, Johan Rojas is probably a quad A player, because he hits every time he goes down to Lehigh Valley. Mm-hmm. He's probably a quad A player. You produce the emergency pods. You know that I'm tepid on Harrison Bader. Mm-hmm. I think he's an upgrade compared to what they've had, right? With Kepler being awful and Rojas being sent down.
And just the entire approach, anything he gives you to at least mix it up a little bit and show some kind of threat at the plate, it just makes it much different than it's like, all right, I can just take this off.
But, looking around the league, it was pretty evident that there weren't a lot of game-changing bats that were available, it really was pretty much just at Eugenio Suarez.
Mm-hmm.
And, once they missed out, and I guess, like, I'm a bigger Josh Naylor fan than most. Maybe Josh Naylor from a power perspective, but they were never going to be in on Naylor. They didn't need him.
Mm-hmm.
Suarez was a guy that made sense, but, they didn't end up making the deal. The rest of the group, like, I thought about a guy like, I was big on Ramon Laureano. Laureano and O'Hearn ended up getting packaged together, and San Diego gave up like every prospect that they had.
Yeah, a lot.
They gave up, what was it, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 10, 14. It was like, I sound like I'm being hyperbolic, but it feels like that's real.
Yeah, it was like 9 of their top 30 and like 5 of their top 10, something like that.
14 prospects in total, I think they gave up.
They really emptied it out. And
so, so I think that there was not a lot of moves to be made. Again, I think Bader's an upgrade. It's just a tepid upgrade. Obviously your big acquisition was bolstering your bullpen by, in my opinion. Now, I don't know how you felt about Mason Miller versus Duran versus Helsley type of guys. In my opinion, and I said this prior to the deadline, if I was going to overspend on a reliever, it would be Yohan Duran. I love Duran. His stuff is filthy. I think with 2.5 years of team control, that's the type of guy that I'd be comfortable moving big-time prospects for. And the haul that they gave up, I love Eduardo Taiit. I think he's going to be a really good major league hitter. Mick Abel was going to go in pretty much any move that you made. So I think it ended up being a less than what I expected deal to get your bullpen where it needed to be, which was to go get a legitimate closer. I think when it comes to the offensive side of things, there weren't a lot of big-time players getting moved, right? Like, the teams that maybe had those players that could move either are actually playoff contenders that we didn't expect or didn't move that guy, like a Byron Buxton who had a no-trade clause and clearly likes being in Minnesota. I look at Boston. Like, a month and a half ago, we were talking about after they traded Devers, they got to trade Duran or Abreu or somebody. They're a playoff team now, so they weren't going to make any moves, right? So with the amount of teams that make the postseason, there was not a lot of offensive productivity to be had. I totally get that. I think it does put a lot of pressure on your top 4, and whether your fourth guy is Bohm or Real Muto or Castellanos, it puts a lot of pressure on your top 4.
100%. And it does make the game plan for the starting pitchers and the rotation a lot more narrow in that, we can kind of mix it up a little bit and lighten the load per se and really kind of hone in on just the stretch that really could be brutal for us and game changing, instead of having a very well balanced lineup that is more taxing, every hitter being not of equal threat at the plate, but just a higher standard that you have to take more seriously.
We're going to break in just a second. We have one more break to get to. I asked Andrew this. I'm going to ask you this question too. Heading into the postseason, would you rather have a team constructed the way the Phillies are constructed, with elite level starting pitching and inconsistencies in the offense, or a team constructed like the Chicago Cubs, who could mash you any given day, but also have a lot of question marks in their starting rotation?
That's really complicated for me, especially in a postseason sense. I think
Andrew took the Cubs, by the way, not the Cubs specifically, but the structure.
Yes, yeah. I probably have to lean that way a little more, and probably because it's not well thought out. But I mean, you and I were talking about it beforehand, just how Tommy John is not ruining this game, not in a in a literal sense, as so many players are just dropping as the bar for these pitchers becomes so much higher. And it just becomes so much more taxing, where, I mean, even in 2022, like, Aaron Nola just totally flamed out. And you could tell he was right at the limit. This was not something expected for this team to continue to push so far, and to not have those times off, even just, 5 or 6 innings instead of 7, I think proves a massive,
and that's
massive
why
difference.
I think a lot of teams, the Phillies, the Mets, the Padres, put a lot of stock into their bullpens, right? Like, I don't think we're going to get to the Padres today. Maybe we'll do that on Monday. But the Padres, to me, are the team that legitimately can cut you down to a 6-inning game. Because if you're losing to the Padres after 6 innings, and you got to face Adrian Morejon and Jason Adam and Mason Miller and Robert Suarez, that's a dangerous bullpen. And even if one guy's off, the other 3 should probably pick up.
Yeah.
pick up the slack.
Mm-hmm.
So they are truly a team that, excuse me, got the hiccups all of a sudden. They are truly a team that I think can cut you down to an 18-out game, because after that, you might not get anything else.
Yeah.
All right, let's pause. One final break on the other side. We'll quickly get to the Mets. We talked a little bit about them on Wednesday. We'll save the Padres and the Cubs and the Dodgers for next week. But it is the PHLY Phillies podcast brought to you by our friends over at Bet365. We will be right back after this. All right, if you're looking for the most affordable 7-passenger SUV in America, CherryHillMitsubishi.com has you covered. It's the 2025 Mitsubishi Outlander. Take advantage of an incredible APR financing. This is for Pennsylvania residents only, but they are offering 0% APR financing for 60 months. Do you know 60 months? You know how long that is? It's 5 years. So you're going to have incredible APR financing, or if you're looking for something a little bit more on the certified pre-owned end, take advantage of the 2024 Mitsubishi Mirage with payments starting as low as $55 a week with 0 down retail. That offer is not valid with trade-in. It is subject to credit approval by a third party. Not all applicants may qualify. And stop in today and tell them that PHLY sent you. You'll get a $100 restaurant.com gift card just for taking a test drive or completing a trade appraisal. Listen, I know people buy Mitsubishis elsewhere. I'm just not entirely sure why. Drive home in your new Mitsubishi today, just minutes from all bridges, or available at 24/7 at CherryHillMitsubishi.com. All right, if you're thinking about popping the question to your special someone, look no further than Golden Nugget, because for the past 30 years, Golden Nugget Jewelers have operated out of the very same location right in the heart of Philadelphia. And that's why customers from across Pennsylvania and New Jersey and even Baltimore and New York City have come to Golden Nugget to find the perfect engagement ring or wedding band, because their staff is highly trained. They offer you dedicated service and a personalized shopping experience from the initial consultation all the way up through the purchasing process and that final cleaning with, of course, with that appraisal. So they offer a vast selection of engagement rings and wedding bands, but they also give you different jewelry as well. High-end watches, fashion jewelry, sparkling diamond necklaces, bracelets, earrings, whatever the occasion you're looking to shop for the loved one in your life, head on over to Golden Nugget Jewelers. You'll receive a final cleaning and written appraisal with every engagement ring you purchase, and that is why you want to stop on over to 8th and Chestnut in downtown Philly. Golden Nugget Jeweler has been family-owned and operated since 1987. You deserve the expert with the best price. That's where Golden Nugget Jeweler comes in. It's where Philly gets engaged. Visit GoldenNuggetJewelry.com today to learn more. All right, we are just about closing in on the end of today's show. As I said, we're not going to get a chance to get to the Cubs or the Padres or the Dodgers, but I want to wrap up today's show with the Mets, because I think they're probably the most tangible conversation out of the rest of the group. But before we do that, I want to say thank you to everybody who's tuned in on our streaming platforms, whether it be our Roku, our Samsung platforms. Head on over to allphly.com to watch the rest of the show, because from here on out, we are officially in overtime. Or extra innings. You know, I'm getting that branding done one day. I promise you, by the end of the season, we're calling this extra innings. I think it's silly to have our overtime period not be an overtime period. We're getting this thing called extra innings at some point. All right, let's get to the Mets really quickly before we get out of here, because they are, again, I think it's the most tangible conversation piece to have. We had this conversation a little bit on Wednesday. I think the Mets' strength, especially post-trade deadline, is their bullpen. They now have 4 guys in the bullpen who have 2.77 ERAs or better. They have really, in my opinion, 3 guys who could close out the game. Their legit closer, Edwin Diaz, has been filthy all year. 44 appearances, 67 strikeouts, a 1.41 ERA, and a sub-1 whip. They acquired Ryan Helsley at the trade deadline from the Cardinals. He's not been quite as good numerically as he was for St. Louis last year, but he's been much better in June and July. A little bit of a rough start to the season, but his ERA is down to 2.77. He's got a 1.36 whip. He's over a strikeout per appearance as well. Tyler Rogers, funky sidewinder, doesn't strike a lot of hitters out, but just doesn't give up a lot of hard contact. He induces a lot of weak grounders, broken bats, bloopers type of stuff. He's got 56 appearances this year, a 1.87 ERA, and a sub-1 whip of his own. And then I think maybe the unsung hero of the Mets bullpen is Reed Garrett. He's got 48 appearances, more than an inning, more than a strikeout per inning pitched at 54 per 48 appearances, a 2.51 ERA, and a 1.16 WHIP himself. That's 4 really good relievers in the back end of the Mets bullpen. And again, it's, teams have loaded up on back end of the bullpen help because they understand they need as many arms and as much help as they possibly can get heading into a stretch run. Now, we talked about this on Wednesday. What's the weakness of the Mets? I think right now it might be their starting pitching. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say it's a bad rotation because it's not. Kodai Senga has been really, really good this year. He's posted a 2.31 ERA. Sean Manaea is going to continue to get better as the postseason kind of gets closer and closer. He's only made 5 starts this year. Clay Holmes has been really good. I didn't know what to expect from Clay Holmes when they announced he was going to be a starter, but he's got a 3.46 ERA as well. But the problem that the Mets face is they're not getting a lot of depth from their starters not named David Peterson. Kodai Senga hasn't gotten into the 7th or finished the 6th since June 6th. Clay Holmes hasn't done it since June 7th. Frankie Montas hasn't done it all year. Sean Manaea hasn't done it all year. He got close. He went 5 2/3 the other day, but he didn't do that as well. You have a bunch of guys right now who have not thrown a lot of innings. Again, Manaea's only made 5 starts this year. He'll get more stretched out as the rest of the season unfolds. But Kodai Senga's made 17 starts, and he's only pitched 90 innings. Clay Holmes has made 23 starts. He's only pitched 122 1/3, which basically comes out to a little over 5 innings to start. That's why it's so important for the Mets to go and bolster their bullpen and have 4 or 5 guys that they can really trust, because of the fact that they're not going to get a lot of length from their starting pitchers. And Ethan talked about it a couple minutes ago, right? It's a league that 5 or 6 is acceptable. And so if you get 6 really good innings out of Senga, out of Manaea, out of Peterson, who's been really the only guy who's given them any kind of length as a starter, you feel good with the guys at the back end of your bullpen, right? With Garrett, with, I think Ryan Stanek hasn't been very good this year ERA-wise, but that's a guy that I feel like is better than what his ERA tells you. But then you go Diaz and Helsley and Rogers. It's a really good back end of the bullpen for the Mets. But I think every team at this point, if you get 18 outs from your starter in the postseason, that's a win. I think it's a huge win if they get into the 7th inning. But you're going to mix and match matchups as best as you can. Again, understanding that most relievers are going to have to face the 3-batter minimum. But I think for the Mets, for the Padres, and I guess even for the Phillies to a lesser extent, these teams are looking at their rotations and going, you give us 6 good innings, we'll turn this thing over to the bullpen. We'll turn it over to the Padres bullpen's been elite all year. The Mets bullpen is really, really good. The Phillies getting Duran helps them. I trust Duran. I trust Strom. I trust Kerkering. After that, I'm a Banks guy, but I think in a high leverage spot, I think he's best used in spots. But I think a lot of these teams are going to start to look at it and go, man, give us 18 outs and we are golden, especially if we can get a couple runs against the other team's starter. But as I said on Wednesday, good bullpens can get burnt out. And if the Mets are only going 5 6 in the regular season, that's how you end up with guys like Diaz and Garrett and Rogers and Helsley all throwing 70 times this year. Garrett's already over 50 appearances. Closing in on 50 appearances. Rogers is already over 50 appearances. Diaz is at 44. Helsley's about to get to 40. That's how you tax a bullpen. So for as good as the Mets bullpen is, their starting pitching is going to have to start getting deeper into games. Or they're going to have to start having somebody that they trust to pitch multiple innings down the stretch in a long reliever type of role to bridge the gap between the starter and these guys. All right, that's about gonna do it for today's show. A big thank you to everybody who was in the chat today. K-Red, MBD, hello, Elephant in the Room, John Peace. Big thank you to everybody who is here. Futz, thank you for the super chat again. Really appreciate you as well. Everybody that was with us today, thank you so much for being a part of today's show. Enjoy your weekend. We'll be back on Monday. for the next installment of the PHLY Phillies podcast. We'll recap the series against the Texas Rangers. We'll look ahead to the week that is, which is going to be the Cincinnati Reds and the Washington Nationals. And, of course, a big thank you to Ethan Hartley for producing today's show as well. We'll be back on Monday. Enjoy your weekend. I think it's supposed to be really nice weather this weekend, so enjoy it. Later night game tonight, 8 o'clock start tonight, 7, I believe, tomorrow, and then the afternoon game on Sunday as well. You will see Christopher Sanchez tonight. Zach Wheeler gets pushed back to Sunday. We'll see what happens. Does he make the start on Sunday? I'm under the impression he probably will, but we'll see what happens, see how long Rob Thompson gives him in that start. So we'll talk to you on Monday at 2 o'clock. Switch on over to the PHLY Eagles podcast. The Ospreys are live right now, and is your final chance to say goodbye to our friend Zach Berman, who's departing after this episode of the Ospreys. And by the way, speaking of the PHLY Eagles, as much I am super sad to see Zach leave. Zach's not only a world-class podcaster and journalist, he's also an excellent dude. Very sad to see Zach leave. Very excited to tell you, if you haven't seen it on Twitter, EJ Smith is going to be joining us. EJ was most recently with the Inquirer. He will be joining the PHLY Phillies. Maybe he'll join the Phillies show. I don't know. We'll have him on once or twice. But he's going to be joining the PHLY Eagles beat to do the podcast with Bo and Fran and to cover the team as well. So we'll be back with you on Monday. Eagles, Ospreys coming up right now. We're on right now. PHLY Sixers at 3 o'clock. Hope you have an excellent weekend. We'll talk to you at 1 o'clock right here on the PHLY Phillies podcast on Monday. Talk to you then. See ya.
We all silly like the man.